Good morning. Welcome in. Your SEC Insider Hit this morning is brought to you by Edwin Watts Golf Shop on County Line Road. They will get your golf game in gear before you go to Live Oaks Golf Club or Dancing Rabbit Golf Club. Edwin Watts Golf Shop on County Line Road. The #1 selection of golf clubs, golf balls, and everything that you need for your game. Edwin Watts Golf Shop, County Line Road, before you hit Live Oaks Golf Club or Dancing Rabbit. We're streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app. You can watch the show right now on Facebook. Search the Out of Bounds show. That's pretty simple. And you're listening to WRKS ESPN 105.9 The Zone. We welcome in our friend Steve Palazzolo, Pro Football Focus, PFF.com. Steve joins us on the Modelo guest line. Steve, when are y'all going to move Matt Corral to #1 over Spencer Rattler in your quarterback rankings?
Oh, I need to take over the rankings again, I guess, so I can get in good with you guys.
Hey.
He's on our to-watch list. We'll see.
Dude, Sam Howell is not even in Matt Corral's zip code.
I don't know about that. Sam Howell's done some really nice things at UNC over the last couple of years. Corral was awesome last year. He was fantastic. I think for a lot of these guys, it's like the Baylor system from a couple of years ago, but on steroids for some of these guys. A lot of go balls, a lot of not a ton of NFL type of reads. It's going to be a challenge, I think, separating some of these guys this year, including Howell, including Corral. They're in awesome offenses that play to their strengths, which is great for college, but does make the projection game a little bit trickier when you're talking about the NFL.
Does Kithen somewhat hurt Corral in that his offense and play calling, people believe, that elevates Corral's play?
Yeah, I think there's definitely elements of that. You have to just try to parse out what guys are asked to do. Like even when you saw Patrick Mahomes in college, it was like, all right, he's doing a bunch of things that probably won't translate to the NFL, and then he overcame and he turned his weaknesses into strengths. But with other guys, again, I use the Baylor example. The Baylor offense, and Lane has taken a lot of these principles. The Baylor offense was a lot of like, all right, we're running deep, we're running, it's going to be go balls and screens and hitches and simpler patterns. So it's what's the quarterback asked to do as much as how good is Lane Kiffin or how good is a play caller. Lane has been fantastic as a play caller, but also when you do that, it does take something off the quarterback's plate, which again makes it trickier to project them going forward when they have more responsibilities at the NFL level.
But you wouldn't be, or would you be, surprised if by December Matt Corral has leapfrogged several of these guys that are in front of him, so to speak, and he's kind of the talk of the town when it comes to QB play in college football?
No, I wouldn't be surprised. I think it's kind of wide open. Our initial rankings, our guy Mike Renner, who does our college work, we do have Spencer Rattler #1. I anticipate him being that guy. I think he's just got special feel in the pocket, outside the pocket, touch, velocity. He's got it all. I do think beyond that, Sam Howell, I certainly have my question marks. He's currently our #2. I think Malik Willis from Liberty he's there just because his physical tools are just ridiculous. I mean, it is a Josh Allen caliber arm, but he's never played great football, Malik Willis out of Liberty. So his is more of a projection. Kedon Slovis from USC, different from all these other guys, doesn't have great tools. He's just more of a spread the ball around, throw accurately type of guy. Carson Strong from Nevada is in the mix here. So there's some names. Emory Jones could be a wild card coming out of Florida. So there's a lot of players, but I don't think any of those guys are locked in as, here's the guy to watch just behind Spencer Rattler. I think it's wide open, and if Matt Corral does have another great year, I think he could turn some heads.
For our listeners, I'm giving Palazzolo a little bit of a hard time. PFF has Matt Corral as their preseason first-team all-conference QB out of the Southeastern Conference. So they recognize that he is the dude in the best league in the country. But they really like Spencer Rattler and some other guys too, so it's all good.
I'm
Steve,
a little bitter because I'm a Florida fan, and he was committed to the Gators for a while. So even though had Kyle Trask break out the last couple of years, I'm a little bitter that Matt gave up on Florida a few years ago.
yeah, but Dan dropped him for Emory Jones. That's the interesting piece of the puzzle there, Palazzolo.
Oh, is that what? I didn't know that was exactly how it happened.
So
I remember watching Corral in high school and being like, wow, yeah, he's a baller. He's a playmaker.
well, all right. So at that time, all right, Mullen takes the job at Florida, okay, and immediately flies out there to Corral, and for whatever reason they don't get the warm and fuzzies. Dan flies all the way back to Gainesville or wherever and goes all in on Emory Jones, who was committed to Urban Meyer in Ohio State, and flips him. And then Phil Longo and Matt Luke were savvy enough to walk right in the door as soon as Dan Mullen left and make sure that and solidified a commitment from Corral. Isn't that wild?
That is a good. Yeah, I used to. I've lost the ability to keep up with some of the recruiting trends in the stories. I didn't realize that's how it all went down. But it's such a challenge, right? As a college coach, because you can only get one or two quarterbacks per cycle, and quarterbacks hate being, one of two. You have to make a choice. You really do have to make a choice. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't.
Emory Jones is this year, because Dan is fantastic with QBs, as is Kithen. But we know Corral's going to
He'll have a good year.
Yeah, exactly. He'll have a good year. We know Corral will be special, one, because he's really good, two, because Kithen's so darn good at scheming it up. But the question is, like, how good a year will Emory Jones have? And I can't wait to see that. So you think all right, Corral has a big year, but either way, you think Spencer Rattler out of Oklahoma has the stuff to, quote unquote, carry this thing from start to finish and stay number one, Steve?
Yeah, I think he does. I mean, when Rattler, when he first was recruited and came out, I remember the description being like he's a combination of Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, just to compare him to the recent Oklahoma quarterbacks at the time. And I think he's showed that. The other thing that he has, he is so comfortable playing outside the pocket. He had 830 yards and 9 touchdowns outside the pocket, which is just absurd. That's over 220 yards more than any other quarterback just outside the pocket. He's got this comfort level outside of structure. Now, if you asked me about that 5 years ago, I'd say, hey, that's overrated. Let me see what you do inside the pocket. But and he's still good there. But I do think the way the NFL is trending, they're doing a better job of scheming it up for the quarterback within structure. But they want, and this is the trend in the NFL, they want the guy that's the natural playmaker. They want, this is how Josh Allen has broken out and become an MVP candidate. This is why the Rams have moved from Jared Goff to Matthew Stafford. The NFL wants, and I think needs, guys who are just natural playmakers and just have that feel. Of course, Patrick Mahomes is the best example too. And I think Rattler has all of that. So I think he has the ability to make plays inside the pocket, outside the pocket, and I think that's going to has the touch, has a very good arm, and accuracy. So I think Rattler has what it takes to go wire to wire here as far as the top quarterback in the class.
That's impressive. Trevor Lawrence was able to do it. It's not easy because as you and I have discussed, and as you talk about all the time, and y'all are doing this, you do this full time. We love to pick apart the number one guy, So,
sure.
When you're Trevor, Spencer, or so on. Do you think that how long do you think it will take Trevor Lawrence to get up and running and playing at least good football in the NFL, or do you think it's going to be pretty early, like mid-September, late September type deal?
I think he'll be good right away. The two guys that I keep bringing up as past prospects that you might want to look at are Andrew Luck. Of course, he's already been compared to Andrew Luck, and then Deshaun Watson. So Andrew Luck, as far as you're talking about Lawrence as the best prospect since Luck or since Elway or whatever you want to make that cutoff. But Andrew Luck's career, he started off good. He started off good right away, for a rookie in not the best situation in Indianapolis. And I don't think he really peaked until about year 5, and then then he retired. But it took Andrew Luck he was a good NFL quarterback for his first 3-4 years. And then by years 5 and 6 in the league, it was like, all right, this looks and feels like the elite Andrew Luck, even though the stats never really matched it. If Trevor Lawrence had that kind of career path, I wouldn't be that I wouldn't be that surprised. If it took it takes a couple of years, he goes from good for a few years to okay, he's one of the elites. In year 3, 4, 5, whatever that is. Deshaun Watson's actually taken a similar path. Watson was very good. He was good. Last year, I thought he took a massive step forward, even though they only won 4 games. In his college career, Watson does resemble Trevor Lawrence's same system, similar stats. Everything's close. So I think Lawrence will be good right away. I don't think you step in and, even though he's the quote-unquote generational prospect, I don't think Trevor Lawrence steps in and looks like Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady. But he comes in, good quarterback, and then at some point it kind of clicks, and before you know it, okay, Trevor Lawrence is that top 5 guy that I think people expected. I think that will happen in the coming years.
PFF.com, Pro Football Focus. He is Steve Palazzolo on the Modelo guest line. Now, I can't remember because we talked about this a couple of months ago. Who has the biggest bust rate for you that was drafted in the first round this year, Steve, QB-wise?
I think it's Trey Lance.
Okay.
I just think it's just using data. The guy dropped back 320 times in college. So even though he's young and has everything you're looking for, he doesn't look inexperienced the way he plays. He certainly has what you're looking for in a quarterback. I think as a passer, Trey Lance has the biggest bust rate. The thing that is saving him, though, is that rushing ability, right? If he has 600, 800 yards on the ground, it's tough to have a bad offense when your quarterback's doing that. It just is. It's just a different element. So I think it's Lance, just because of that, just because of the lack of experience essentially in the passing game in college.
Yeah. All right. So you've got,
and I'm saying all that, and he's in the best situation too. So like in isolation, I'd say it's Trey Lance, but man, you had the rushing ability, you had the fact that he's with Kyle Shanahan. It's going to be. He should be good, in San Francisco.
And he doesn't have to play, right?
No, I'm interested to see what happens there. I think the Niners clearly looked at Jimmy Garoppolo, who just took him to the Super Bowl. It's the same thing I said a couple minutes ago about what the NFL's doing, right? I mean, Kyle Shanahan made a decision and said, well, first off, Jimmy Garoppolo can't stay healthy, but here's this guy that took me to the Super Bowl, runs my offense really well, but I want a little bit more. Again, like the Rams did with Jared Goff, like other teams have done, saying, hey, running the system might not be good enough in today's NFL. Give me that plus the playmaking. So the fact that Shanahan's making that statement makes me think, man, he really wants Trey Lance to start earlier rather than later, and doesn't want to have Jimmy Garoppolo as his starter. He certainly could, and then if Garoppolo gets hurt again, Trey Lance takes over. But I think they want to get the Trey Lance experience as soon as possible in San Francisco.
So you think they could remove Jimmy G, 4, 6, 8 games into the season? Somebody's excited about that in your house. I just said Jimmy G, and evidently one of your kids really likes Garoppolo.
I just drove 16 hours in the minivan up to Massachusetts, hanging out at my parents. I'm in my parents' basement for the next few weeks. So
wow.
There's kids running around everywhere. It's going to be fun. So forgive me. I really, there was a big deal made of Matt Nagy and Justin Fields, and when he said, no, Andy Dalton's our starter, basically saying Andy Dalton's going to start week 1 because we have a plan for Justin Fields. I think all 5 starting quarterbacks, that should be the plan, right? You drafted these guys to be the future, and you have to do what's best by them. And if you think that's sit them for 3, 4, 5 weeks, and then they come in, they learn the system a little bit, and then whenever they're ready to start, they should be starting. And I think that should be the case for all of them. Trevor Lawrence, I expect to start right away, and rightfully so. But I do think everyone else, when they're ready, you put them in there, and that should be the plan. So whether it's Trey Lance, whether it's Mac Jones, Justin Fields, you do what's best for your first-round quarterback because you got him for a reason, to see if he's the future. So every decision should be based around their development and what's best for those first-round QBs.
Okay, now we have someone on the show that argues that the NFL doesn't develop quarterbacks, that you have to now, I know that's a little extreme, okay, but I think what he says is you can either play – they're not going to waste a lot of time. You can either play or you can't, and your window is so small that I kind of what you're referencing, they're going to roll you out, see what you got, and if you ain't good enough, they're moving on. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's the way that it should be. It's tough to have patience in today's NFL because it's not, again, the goal isn't to just find a starting quarterback. You're not just trying to find a guy who's capable of starting 16 games. There's 32 of those guys, right? There's 32 guys that are capable starters. There might be more in the league right now, actual capable starters in the NFL. If you want to differentiate yourself from the rest of the league, you have to get a top 10 guy, a top 8 guy. You have to have a guy that is pretty consistent year to year among the best in the league. And that is the cheat code in today's NFL. Having a good quarterback is 10 times more important than having a good any other position. So, yes, if a guy doesn't have it, Dwayne Haskins after a year and a half, or Mitchell Trubisky, honestly, the Bears should have moved on from Trubisky after they won 12 games in 2018 with him. They should have said, you know what, our team is so good, but Trubisky's holding us back. We need to move on from him, even though we just won the division. That you have to make those decisions quickly because even if a guy develops into an average starting quarterback, that's not the goal, right? The goal is to continue to get that top 10 guy. Again, I go back to Arizona a couple of years ago, getting, not sitting there saying, well, we invested in Josh Rosen, we got to give him 3 or 4 years. No, you don't. You just go get Kyler Murray, go get the next guy. Take your chances. So I think, yeah, the NFL, it sounds cruel, but you have to continue to move on until you get that position, not just right as a starter, but really right, until you know that you have that top 10-ish caliber guy.
This thing is going to happen soon. They're going to rip the Band-Aid off, and by about game 8, if not before this year, they may not say it, but they're going to know. You agree or disagree?
I'm sorry, who are you talking about?
Tua down at Miami.
Yeah, I think they'll know. He's the one case. It depends on how you're judging how much time a guy has, right? I mean, Tua was coming off injury. He didn't play the whole season last year. But I do think around midseason you'll have a good feel. I mean, it honestly does depend on how their offensive line comes together. He might be playing behind one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL, despite the way they've invested at that position the last couple of years. It's still not great. The playmakers are fantastic, though. So, yeah, if he's not creating some big plays with Jalen Waddle in the mix now and Will Fuller, Devontae Parker, and Mike Gesicki, if that's not happening, yeah, that's a concern for Tua. And yeah, the Dolphins are one of those teams that does have to make a quick decision. They've built this really good, solid roster on both sides of the ball. They can compete. It's becoming a very competitive AFC East. And, yeah, the Dolphins will know about Tua, I think, pretty quickly, unless that offensive line is just a disaster and it's holding them back, which is still a possibility.
You're high on Mac Jones. I'm not. So this is going to be interesting how this all plays out. I'm not sure he'll even be in the league in 3 years, but I can't wait to see what Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels can do, either can or can't do with Mac Jones out of Alabama. Because
it's another interesting one. They love him already for whatever that's worth. The buzz is real in New England. I don't think A.J. McCarron was the right proxy for him. I think he's better than that. But again, there's a range of outcomes here, right? I mean, for Mac Jones to be worth it, so to speak, as the future, he needs to be at that high end of your traditional pocket passers. And let's take Brady out of it. Let's take Breeze out of it. If Mac Jones is as good as, say, Phillip Rivers, who was a top 8 caliber quarterback for the majority of his career, as just one of those pure pocket passers, that's what you need for that Mac Jones pick to hit. Now, if he ends up as an Andy Dalton, all right, he could have a couple good years, but that's another spot where you might end up trying to move on. So it's, it's somewhere in that range where Mac Jones lands, and we'll see how much patience the Patriots have and just how good he is with the accuracy and decision-making, if that actually does translate at the next level, or if we do see just how much Mac Jones was elevated by that incredible receiving core at Alabama.
I think it'll be the latter. So Mac Jones, what is one tier below Andy Dalton? Just off the top of your head.
I mean, if we're talking 6 or 7 years ago, I think Andy Dalton was like dead smack in the middle of starting quarterbacks.
So I think he's Andy Dalton light. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that could be where he lands. Again, I think you have to view a lot of these projections with a range of outcomes. There's a best case scenario, there's an expected scenario, and there's a worst case scenario. There's a floor, right? But I think right now, Andy Dalton, if you put him in, he's QB 24, 25 if he's the starter. And again, I think that just explains where the NFL is at. I think they had a tough time finding Andy Daltons 7 or 8 years ago. I don't think it's tough now.
That's a great
Sam
point.
Darnold is probably Andy Dalton's quality, right? Jameis Winston is Andy Dalton plus, I think, and he wasn't even a starter last year. I think finding a quote-unquote starter, Marcus Mariota, it's not difficult. They're out there. But you need to have that top half of the league type of guy to really make a difference.
Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com, Pro Football Focus on the Modelo guest line. That was fun. All right. Well, look, man, I hope you have a good week or two or however long you're there up in New England.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I'm just glad I'm not in the minivan all day right now.
Oh, I can't imagine, buddy. I mean, hey, and just make sure to get a cooler of cold beer. And
yeah.
Are you manning the grill, or is a brother or dad? Who's manning the grill?
My dad. My dad owns the grill up here. So
love it.
I let him work and do his thing. Yeah, I'm excited. The seafood, the grill. We got a lot planned for a couple of weeks here.
Good. Well, look, man, it's great having you back on, and enjoy your time with family. And we'll talk soon. Be good, buddy.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Steve Palazzolo, PFF.com, Pro Football Focus. By the way, Pro Football Focus has Jerrion Ealy as I just liked it on Twitter, the number 2 running back in the early 2022 NFL draft running back rankings. They have Breece Hall from Iowa State as 1, Ealy as 2, Spiller out of A&M, who is an absolute load, at 3. And then Mississippi State fans, you may want to remember this, Zonovan Knight out of North Carolina State is the number 4 tailback, according to Pro Football Focus, on their early 2022 NFL draft running back, which means you'll face Jerrion Ealy and the number 4 tailback, Zonovan Knight, in Starkville. But Knight will be in game 2. Back in a second.